Hello, hello. We're about to get started and we're currently live streaming on YouTube. So thank you for joining us this Friday morning. And if you're feeling in any way familiar to how I'm feeling, I'm exhausted this week. So for any managers out there that are having a tough, draining week, I'm right there with you as we talk about this engaging topic of igniting engagement, strategies for motivating employees. And we're in our week 2 episode, which is sure to prove to be interesting. I really had a great time putting this together. So let's go ahead and keep our morning going. So a little bit about me and Management Cues. So I'm Dr. Myra Austin. I'm the CEO and founder of Management Cues. And Management Cues provides a training that has been scientifically proven to work and is backed by neuroscience. We work with our partners at Neuron, which have tested our programs, worked with our clients, and have been able to show that we can even positively impact cognitive states, which you will learn a little bit about the neuroscience behind recognition and empowerment and motivation today. So it's definitely going to be jam-packed with some great information for our managers out there. So, like we mentioned, we focus on providing training that is unique, that is effective and proven to work, and that really equips managers with an opportunity to not only do a good job, but to have a positive experience doing it. So we'll learn a little bit more of what it takes to do that as we walk through recognition today. So today we're going to focus on creating a culture of recognition, celebrating success to boost morale, and really understanding, one, what happens to our brains when we're appropriately and effectively executing recognition and recognition programs, and what happens when it fails, when managers aren't equipped with the knowledge to successfully execute, or when decision makers aren't aware that there are other considerations that we should be thinking about when we're thinking of recognition. So here we go. Let's get into it. I'm actually really excited about this week's content. So celebrating wins, big and small, is productive in the workforce. And the reason I'm sharing that is I know that in the past, we have heard maybe leaders say it's a waste of time, or maybe we've heard leaders say we don't have resources for that, or maybe we've gotten pushback as managers for the things we want to recognize. So hopefully today's week 2 session will give you a bit of validation about what works and what doesn't when it comes to recognition. So celebrating wins activates the brain's reward system. So it actually has an impact on what people are experiencing in their brain. Celebrating wins releases dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter. And celebrating wins reinforces behavior, focus, and attention. So why is recognition in the workforce strategic? So it's strategic for these reasons. Boost in motivation, celebrating achievements triggers dopamine, increasing morale and encouraging repeated behavior. So when we want our employees, our team members to repeat positive behavior, recognizing them makes a difference. It reinforces that it is a good thing to do in their brain. It builds connection. Recognition releases oxytocin, which we talked about in week 1, and it enhances trust in teamwork, which strengthens team cohesion. So how well a team works together has been linked to recognition. So when we fail to recognize our team, or we don't have solid recognition strategies, we're actually missing out on a strategic opportunity. Recognition also reduces stress. So celebrating wins actually decreases cortisol levels for people, promoting well-being and reducing burnout. So if you have a team that's burning out quickly, or you as a manager feel like you're burning out, think about whether it's linked to recognition and whether that's taking place effectively in your environment. It encourages growth. Positive reinforcement fosters a growth mindset, driving continuous improvement and learning. increasing productivity. So all of these things are related to one another. Recognition and regular acknowledgement actually boosts the focus and engagement, which leads to higher productivity and better decision making. It also ultimately, from an HR perspective and from a leadership and management perspective, it improves retention. So if you're having turnover and you're having other areas that are impacted by low motivation or low morale, recognition might be the answer for you. So, what role should managers play in recognition? So, as managers, knowing what we need to do is what equips us for success, right? And having the confidence and knowledge to execute is everything. So, here's what managers should think about in terms of their role in relation to recognition. Drive. You want to drive sustainable high performance. You want to build a positive work culture that boosts retention. You want to encourage risk taking and innovation. You want to reduce burnout and promote mental health. You want to enhance decision making and strategic thinking. Create a feedback culture that fosters continuous improvement, and strengthen emotional intelligence and empathy, and align individual goals with organizational objectives, and model. You want to make sure that in terms of recognition, you're modeling that behavior too, and you're setting the tone about how important recognition is. You want to increase employee autonomy and ownership. You want to give them an opportunity to be recognized is really important, right? You make it feel something, mean something. So it's not just a monthly thing that everybody goes through. There's significance to it. And we'll talk a little bit more about how critical that is. So a recent study found that employees who reported that their managers were great at recognizing them were more than 40% more engaged than those with managers who were not. So it's super critical to know that there is an impact when there is a lack of recognition in the environment or within your team. So, how do managers typically fail in these areas? When recognition isn't happening, or when you have recognition programs, but they're not actually working. So, here's what happens: there's inconsistency in acknowledgement, there's generic praise, which lacks impact, right? And that's to the tune of telling everybody you're doing a good job. That's neither personalized, it's not strategic, it's not necessarily going to create that increase in dopamine that actually motivates, right? It becomes generic, it becomes routine. And so it doesn't actually have an impact. Overemphasis on financial rewards, thinking that money is everything everybody cares about is a mistake. And so managers shouldn't assume that everybody is motivated the same way or that everybody would like to get recognized the same way, because it's simply not true. Neglecting small wins, so only focusing on big end goals, culminating big projects, and we miss the milestones along the way. That's a mistake, because each time we recognize, we actually have an opportunity to affect the brain of our employees in a way that's going to reinforce the type of productivity and performance that we need. Leaders' inconsistent involvement. So when the leaders at the top don't really know what's going on or what each team member contributes in terms of impact or what they do differently, those are areas in which culture suffers because there's no cohesiveness between management and the decision makers at the top. Disconnected from core values. So when there isn't consistency of what we're saying we're about and what we're doing, that usually takes away from recognition programs or recognition in a team. Ignoring individual preferences. Some of us are motivated intrinsically. We're motivated by acknowledgement, by reward, by by personalization, and others are motivated by financial outward types of rewards, bonuses, right? And that's really all that we're interested in. So people are different, and it's up to the manager to get to know how their people operate and what they're interested in or what really gets them going. Overlooking peer recognition. So this means opening it up so that team members can recognize each other and have criteria by which they define it so that it doesn't become generic, right? Going back to hey, good job. That's not enough to trigger the kind of response that you actually need through recognition. Only rewarding outcomes and not effort. We can't win every time. And so as managers and leaders, we have to recognize that hard work is being done, even if the overall outcome wasn't what we intended, right? That also creates psychological safety because sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes we don't deliver on time, but there's still a great amount of effort taking place. Lack of program consistency and evaluation. So that's having programs that are no longer relevant or programs that haven't been reviewed in years, right? So much has changed in the workforce. COVID alone has changed how employees evaluate what work-life value means. And I would think the same would be true of what motivates them now. Disregarding employee feedback, so not listening to employees and seeing that there's a lack of motivation in place with what we do have available, and inadequate training on effective recognition, right? So after today's session, you'll get a little bit of a taste of what managers should be aware of when it comes to recognition, and hopefully it'll curve your approach a little bit. But not having training as to how to manage recognition, it just prohibits us from getting a full return on what we're doing. So why some decision makers dismiss recognition? So I know in my experience as a manager, I've gotten pushback. And feel free to chime in and chat or to unmute if you have anything that you'd like to share. But in my experience, I've had decision makers tell me, oh, recognition efforts or incentives sometimes are too cumbersome, are a waste of time, they're too complicated, too many people complain, right? There's excuse after excuse after excuse as to why not to do it. But here's the reality, right? The reason they say no, or the reason they push back on recognition, is typically because they lack visibility on the immediate ROI. They misunderstand the value of recognition. There are time constraints they're concerned about, right? So labor and where time goes and it's where it's allocated. There's a fear of encouraging complacency. And there's an overemphasis on metrics, right? They're focusing on bottom line metrics, or they're focusing on KPIs for the department, and that's where they're seeing the value. So the reason I share this with you guys is because it's important for the manager to know how to speak to recognition and how to highlight the strategic value, and maybe ultimate even how to measure it, right? That what the outcomes, what it's doing for your people and how it's lending to the business. So recognition releases positive neurochemicals. So I find this fascinating because, maybe in the past we've seen recognition as a passing thing, as a very small thing that maybe wasn't as important as it actually is. So recognition creates a dopamine boost that creates feelings of happiness and reinforces the behavior. So that's particularly important for managers because we need specific behavior, right? We're at work in order to execute and to help deliver an outcome. So this behavior leads to success and encourages repetition of positive actions. So recognition does that, and it's a stimulus through dopamine in the brain. A culture of recognition leverages the brain's natural reward system. So in our brain, we have a naturally wired reward system, and we respond to feeling rewarded in specific ways, which drives individuals to seek out similar rewards through a sustained effort and performance, meaning that they're likely to do the same thing because they like how being rewarded or recognized feels, right? That's that increase in dopamine. So dopamine release not only boosts the mood, but it also heightens focus. So that to me was something that I've recently learned, right? I knew that there was a boost in mood, and I knew that there was a boost in dopamine, but to know that it increases focus, that makes your investment as a manager in recognition a lot more strategic. So, strengthening neural pathways for learning. So, another really cool thing that recognition does is it actually helps people learn. So, recognition of achievements can strengthen neural connections related to skills, habits, and behaviors. So, think about that. As managers, we're helping people develop, we're helping people execute their job correctly, we're helping mitigate risk for the company. We need behaviors to be on point in order for us to be successful. The brain encodes these positive experience. That's right, the brain keeps record. So it literally has coding around recognition in our brain when it takes place. This aligns with the concept of neuroplasticity, where the brain's capacity to adapt and learn is enhanced by positive reinforcement. So, just by show on the chat, did you guys know that recognition and it had this impact? And you could just type in yes or no in the chat. You don't have to unmute. I'm curious if this is new information to you guys. So I'll go ahead and keep going while you guys respond in chat. This aligns with the concept, and it's particularly important because it encourages a growth mindset. So part of recognition, okay, great. I'm glad that this is new information. Thank you. Thank you, Tracy. So the growth mindset is about celebrating small wins, and it helps cement the belief that the skills and capabilities can be developed. So the other positive aspect of recognition is that it helps you believe that you can do it. And that's such a powerful motivator because once we believe that we can, we tend to be more confident. We tend to try new things, right? So we tend to take actions that we otherwise wouldn't have. And so as a manager, that's critical because we need people to step into the workforce as contributors, right? So managers can reduce stress and anxiety. So right now, we just got through the election. There's been so much stress. There's heightened stress and anxiety around the future workforce, the economy. There's so many things that people are thinking about and so many things that people are feeling about. Celebrating achievements is important. It creates an acknowledgement of success that activates the brain's parasympathetic nervous system, which calms us down. So recognition can actually bring stress levels down, which is really interesting because in our client study, our scientific client study with Neuron, they were able to prove that when people were going through our training, when our clients were going through our training, their stress levels actually decreased. And it was likely due to the confidence that they felt by what they had learned and what they had mastered. So there's no coincidences. Our brain works in a very, very amazing way. Stress reduction is, of course, vital to maintaining a culture where employees feel secure, they feel safe, and like they can try things. And so recognition helps with that too. So these are just a few key components of innovation and engagement, right? You need to feel a certain way to be creative, to engage, to innovate, and to be, engaged with your team and the workforce. So recognition, impact on long-term memory and retention. So not only does recognition help us learn, it helps us remember. And so that's amazing, right? From a neuroscience standpoint, emotionally charged events, such as public celebration of a win, are more likely to be stored in long-term memory. So when we recognize people for doing something in the workforce in the appropriate way, it actually creates a record, and they're likely to remember the reason why that happened for much longer, which is just amazing. Employees are more likely to remember what they did well and why they were recognized. So this reinforces successful strategies and behaviors. Creating memorable moments of celebration helps to embed lessons learned into the workforce collective consciousness, right? So you spread the joy that way. It makes it memorable, not just for the person who's being recognized, but people who are witnessing it. So it's very powerful. And this leads to sustained improvement over time, a long-term culture that's forming results. So there's quite a bit of neuroscience behind recognition in management. And so to me, this is part of a discovery process. And I really think that there's a lot that we can learn as managers as to what's happening when we take certain actions. So recognition and activating the prefrontal cortex, that can be activated when we're celebrating wins. And so the prefrontal cortex is responsible for executive functions, which is decision making, planning, and goal setting. That is such a primary part of the brain that we use as managers. If anything, it almost describes the functions of management, which is really interesting. So, a positive and rewarding work environment supports optimal functioning of this region, leading to better decision making, clearer judgment, and more effective problem solving, which honestly, managers, it makes our job easier when people are in this mode. So, most effective present day recognition program. So, what does it take to put an effective recognition program? And a lot of these programs are put together by our HR teams, our HR leaders, but I'm sharing it with you as managers because I think it's important that you're able to recognize when something is good or when something is lacking and be able to contribute to that discussion or suggest something different, right? So, the programs that are working right now are frequent and meaningful recognition. So it's personalized, it happens routinely, it's meaningful. Digital and AI driven platforms. So interactive type of digital programs out there, which I have some examples for you that you could share with your leadership teams or your HR professionals in your environment. Centralized and integrated systems, right? Systems that are easy to use and accessible to the teams and the managers, and diverse and flexible reward options. So, different options that fit the audiences in the company. So here are some live examples. These are actually platforms that are doing really well right now in 2024. And so these are, I just put these here. I'm not going to read through all of them, but I'll just say the names: Vantage Rewards, Kudos, Bonusly, XOXO Day, and Pulse, and WorkHuman. These are really good platforms that are kind of geared for the modern day workforce. And so if you or your company is struggling with recognition or don't have a recognition program, I encourage you to suggest these or look at these and see if it's something that would work well in your environment. But there are definitely programs that are speaking to some of the things that we've shared in today's webinar. So here are 10 effective steps to recognize team members. So this is something you can do immediately if you want to improve the impact that you're having on your team through recognition. So one, you can recognize and highlight the value of recognition. So you could share what you've learned and why it's important and why we should do it, right? You can clearly communicate that recognition is a priority, that it is important to you and it's important for the company. You can be consistent with recognition efforts, whether it's every quarter, every week, every month, just be consistent. You can use varied methods of verbal praise, notes, digital tools, or quick mentions. You can encourage peer recognition for building camaraderie. So encourage your team to highlight what each other does well. Don't leave it all on you. It doesn't have to be that way, and it helps them be better team members. Align recognition with company goals and values, and set clear recognition criteria and share it with the team. That one is really critical. So if you're going to have a recognition program, make sure that you're highlighting criteria that fits what the company is looking for in terms of performance and what the core values of your company is saying you want to represent, right? Because it should be aligned. Celebrate both milestones and progress. We can't win all the time, but we should celebrate the effort and the thought and the conscientiousness of team members as they're laboring things that are difficult, right? Gather feedback on recognition practices. Ask your team if how you recognize them is effective or not. They will tell you. They will tell you. Lead by example with authentic and consistent recognition. So make sure that you show your team how to recognize and acknowledge other team members. So these are our key takeaways for today. We're short and sweet per usual. So I hope you learned something new about recognition. And if there's anything you want to share in the chat about what you've learned, please feel free to do so. It always lends to our conversation. Our key takeaways for today: celebrating wins and recognizing team members is strategic. It's not a waste of time if you do it right. Managers must effectively recognize and activate recognition programs. So, managers, per usual, we're the activators, and it's up to us to really understand what happens every time we interact with a team member. Recognition programs fail and are a waste of time when they are not executed correctly. And last but certainly not least, and something I was very excited to share with you guys today, neurochemicals are activated when recognition takes place. There's more going on when we recognize people than we maybe ever thought possible. Okay, so I'll leave it to does anybody have any questions in Zoom land? I know we're also streaming live, so let me see if we have any questions in our YouTube live stream, and it looks like we're okay. Here we go. Let's see here. Okay, and I think we're good to go on the chat, so I'll keep going and close us out. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. This was a really interesting topic for me when I was thinking about this week too. So Management Cues offers training and support resources of all shapes and sizes. And so you'll be getting a copy of a webinar deck for today's session for those of you who registered. And then, we also offer training programs that are proven to work. And so you can check those out on our website or click on the link in this deck. And our hero project here is our management planner, which is a very basic tool, but it helps us think about these things in a different way, and is very much designed to incorporate some of these interesting facts and components of how we work as people. And don't forget, the holidays are coming. These are great little gifts that you can give that are impactful, resourceful, and intentional for anybody on your team or any managers that you know. Don't forget to check out our strategic management collection. And that's it. I thank you guys for joining. I hope you've enjoyed it. Feel free to email me if you have any feedback. I definitely want to hear from you if you think that this way of looking at recognition and motivation is a different way and it's interesting to you. Okay? All right. Take care. Have an absolutely amazing weekend. Get some rest. I know we all need it. Thank you so much.